Linking animation elements. One of the uses for expressions is to link the values of attributes from one animation element to another. So for example, if one object moves along the x-axis, it can be referencing the value of the x-axis from another object so that the two will stay synchronized. There are other alternatives, however, to using expressions, so this video is just meant to go over some of those other ways that animation elements can be connected, and this is the world within which the expressions can be used. Linking via expressions. What I'm going to demonstrate is how to set values on the current object by referencing values on another object. So when the values change on that other object, the values on my current object will also change. First, I'm going to demonstrate movement of the box and showing that the ball does not move in sync with it. Choose the Animate tool, make sure the box is selected, and then I can just click and drag on the Y heading here on the tool options, and that moves the box up and down on the Y-axis, changing the Y value. Press Ctrl Z so it goes back to 0. You'll notice that the ball was not moving with the box. Now I go over to the timing room, and I've already selected the two items that I'll be working with, but if I had not done that, you would just click on the item that's in the tree list, and then click on the attribute of that item that you're interested in seeing so that it displays. I did that for the box and for the ball. Now I'm going to enter in at the column level, so I click on the column heading, and I change this from constant to, say, expression. And I'm going to put in a reference to the box, column 3, dot, and then the attribute, Y. Click on Apply. And what I've done is established a connection now between the ball Y attribute and the box Y attribute. Now if I go back to this first view, and I were to move the box along the Y axis, you'll notice the ball will follow. And that is an example of how to link two animation elements using expressions. This method of linking through expressions can be done for the attributes of objects such as column, camera, pegbar, table. It can also be used for effects nodes attributes, those values that would show up when you double-click an effects node, and you can see parameters that you're able to modify. If you're able to animate it, you're able to link it through an expression. Plastic tool skeleton transforms can also be linked. So if you've got one bone of the plastic tool that can be rotated, you can tie it to the rotation angle of another node in that skeleton. This will allow you to make changes at one bone and have it propagate across the rest. Good for moving something like a spine or perhaps a tail. Linking via the plastic tool. It is possible to link portions of a drawing through use of the mesh and the skeleton of the plastic tool. What I'm showing on screen now is one column exposing a drawing called the figure, and I've created a mesh for it, and I've created a skeleton. So the arm was deliberately drawn off to the side so that it could be animated separately from the body, and it was linked to it through use of the skeleton. Now when I go into animate mode, I'm able to relocate that arm When I untick keep distance, I'm able to relocate that arm over to the body. That's doing some crazy things with rotation. That can be fun. Zooming in helps sometimes. And, well, perhaps I also didn't need to create that shoulder connection point so closely. I can fix that. Back to build skeleton. Let's move that shoulder over a little bit. Back to animate. That's better. I'm able to move that arm without it impacting, overlaying the shoulder connection point. Bring it down a little bit. Rotate it. There we go. Turn the mesh off, able to see it. So that's a way of connecting using the plastic tool, linking elements together. Linking via parenting columns. I have my figure on one column. I have a right arm drawing on another column. I can link these two. Right now, if I move the figure, it will not move the arm with it. And right now the arm is off to the side. I can link the two. I'll go into the FX room and click on the icon that swaps between the stage schematic and the FX. Now I'm looking at the stage schematic. It's in detailed mode. I'll turn that off. I only need simple mode for this. And I'm going to connect that right arm. Now it's the figure's right arm. It's on our left in the drawing, but it's the figure's right arm. I'm going to parent that right arm to the figure. I just drag from the blue dot, connect to the red dot on the figure. And we see the figure's already parented to its mesh that is used to control it. And now the right arm is parented to the figure. If I come back to the 2D room, and if I were to move the figure using the animate tool, well, a couple of things happening here. Hold on. I would actually choose the mesh because there's a plastic tool set on that. Now, if I move the mesh, you see it's moving the mesh, the figure, and it's also moving that arm because the arm is parented to follow. Now, I'm still able to move the arm separately, so I'm going to be able to move that arm and bring it over and place it on the figure where it needs to be, and also rotate it. Even though it's parented to the figure, let's also change the center of rotation. Put the center of rotation right at the top of the arm. And then let's rotate it slightly. And let's move it over where it needs to be. Now the arm is on the figure. And remembering that I have to move the mesh if I want to move the figure, because the figure is parented to the mesh. I'm able to see the figure and the two arms follow along with it. And that is through parenting over here on the stage schematic in the simple mode. If I highlight here, I can switch between the display mode of simple or complex. I've chosen the simple mode and parented the right arm to the figure. Figure was already parented to the figure mesh, and then the figure mesh goes into the table. That's an example of using parenting of the columns to link animation elements together. It is also possible to link columns by using the skeleton tool. If the skeleton tool is used, it essentially gives the same results as what we've just seen with the animate tool. As I click on the skeleton, I click on the body link, and if I click on the arm link, notice I had not used the skeleton tool before, but already those bones are active, because really it's another representation of the same parenting that we did using the stage schematic, and it's just another view into that relationship that was set up in the stage schematic. That's the skeleton tool. Another technique to parent columns is to use the hook tool. What the hook tool allows is the specification of another center of attachment. So we can use it in this example because the right arm, we already have the center of that column at the top of the arm so it can attach to the body. We would like to attach a hat to the hand of that arm. In order to do that, a hook tool was used to create an attachment point on the hat and an attachment point on the arm. And in the stage schematic, if we choose the detailed mode, we get more information about these connection points. And so the hat, because that was hook point 1, it was chosen from the list of possible points. Notice the default is B. The 2 points are not joined to each other in the stage schematic yet. Scroll the up and down arrows until it says 1, and now hat hook point 1 is attached to the right arm hook point 1. And that also gives the benefit of being a animatable center, such that that hat could be handed off to another object within the scene, could be placed upon the character's head if it were not animated by a mesh. It's a limitation. Hook points can't be added to a object that has a mesh animating it. And that concludes our different ways of parenting columns and having that as the linking method for animation elements. Linking animation elements using linking nodes in the FX view. Now I'm going to have an FX set on the green box and the red ball, and I'm going to link those two together. So if I make changes to one, the other will automatically update. I swap back to the FX view. You'll notice here I have the ball and the box. They each have their own body highlight effects. You'll see this yellow line connecting those two FX nodes. And the way that yellow line got there is during the creation of this second node, I right-clicked and I chose Create Linked FX. That would link the second FX node to the first one that I was creating it from. So you would set up your first FX node, right-click, choose Create Linked FX, and now there's a peer to it, and the two are maintained as linked. If I were to click here and preview, you'll see that right now there's a body highlight. It's like there's a light shining on the box and on the ball. If I double click on the body highlight for the box and I make a change to it, you'll notice that same change will be reflected in the ball because they're linked. They're going to keep their values in sync. Let me change the X offset. I click and drag down on this bar below. Notice as it changes for the box, it changes for the ball as well. I'll change now the Y value. See, it's as if the light were moving, and it's staying synchronized between the ball and the box. Doesn't matter how you change the values, if you use the sliders or if you use entering the numbers directly. And that's a demonstration of how a linked FX can be created such that changing the values in one node will automatically update the other node. With the two linked FX nodes, we can see here in the function editor that the values for the X are linked between the two. Well, we can make that assumption. We can see that the values are maintained to be the same. Now, if we click on the heading, we see that the interpolation type is set to linear. So it's not as if that linking of the FX nodes is automatically generating an expression. It is not generating it in a format that we ourselves would enter an expression. So if we had not linked the two nodes by creating one from the other and choosing the option to link them, it would be possible to go in to the function editor and choose the appropriate attribute for that second node and to put an expression into this column and refer to the same value from the prior node. The benefit of creating a linked FX node is that all of the attributes are maintained synchronized without any extra work from us. We do not have to create an expression for each attribute. It would give the ability to have more variation if a linked FX node was not created, but instead the functions were put into the expressions. Then you would have control over which attributes are linked and which ones are not. And that would be the pros and cons of that approach, creating a linked FX node. That wraps up this video on linking animation elements using expressions, the plastic tool, parenting columns, and linking nodes in the FX view. Thank you, and look for me in the next video.